got an email on TELUS. What do you think of that company? And more topically today, the fact that the Mobilicity deal was shot down by the government.
Right. You know, sadly in this country, we often see an attempt to regulate, bring competition through regulation. And I understand the premise. We want to make sure that the wireless industry is competitive. But we have only so big a market. And ultimately, my view is that type of consolidation should be able to happen. It's unfortunate it's not going to. But that being said, I think that that's a smaller issue for TELUS and for the industry as a whole. It's a very profitable industry. I like TELUS as a holding. We've talked about it over and over again. It's been just about our biggest holding for several years now. I think that they have characteristics that make it very attractive as an investor for the majority of investors. You've had a very steady rising dividend. They committed 3.5 years ago to raise dividend twice a year for 3 years. They did that. They came out shortly, I guess a few weeks ago, and reiterated the fact that their cash flow continued to grow. They would raise their dividend twice a year for the next 3 years, and they gave us more information, said, well, it'll be a 10% dividend increase a year, and so it continues to do well. Now, certainly in the last 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of telecom stocks have pulled back a little bit into the long-term trend. I think it's a great opportunity to be a buyer. So I think you get a nice consistent yield, you get dividend growth, and you're probably having an opportunity to buy it much like you did in March when it pulled back a few percentage points.
And just quickly, again with Mobilicity, either way it seems to me that they are eliminating a competitor either by buying them, which they're not allowed to do now, or the company just kind of goes bankrupt and disappears.
Right, I mean, and if you read what was said, basically they're saying that they don't want a deal to happen during the 5-year window of the spectrum license, and they don't say anything about what happens at the end of the 5 years, which leaves the window open for deals, maybe just not right now.
Okay, David, a call from Julia, who's in Barrie, Ontario. Hi there.
Hi, thanks very much for taking my call. I wanted to ask about Emera. Do you see this as a good entry point, and would you stick with this stock, considering it's a utility if the rates change? And I also have the preferred. What would happen to the preferred if rates do go up?
Okay.
Thanks.
So, Julia, different sectors are impacted in different ways if bond yields work their way higher, and they certainly have bumped their way higher over the last few weeks. Probably the one that would be most impacted is the utilities, the straight utilities group, regulated businesses. So, Emera you own for the yield, less so for growth in the yield. And so in that sort of area, we prefer energy infrastructure. We think that there's better opportunity for dividend growth there than in something like Emera. So if you have concern about long-term rising interest rates, this is one that could get impacted. Having said that, I would say this backup in bond yields has now largely been discounted in the utilities. I think that if you get to the point where the Fed starts to taper, or they believe the Fed is ready to start to taper, you're going to get a little correction in things that are impacted by higher interest rates business-wise. And so some of the leadership and consumer discretionary and financials could back off and correct, and you could see a reassertion of the more defensive type names. So I don't think you got a ton of risk here. I just don't think there's as much upside in these as you would have in the energy infrastructure companies.
And in that sector, one of your top picks is along those lines, so we'll look forward to that. Let's talk to Tony now. He's in Calgary. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'd like
Tony.
to ask David about Shawcor. I believe this company's in a sweet spot here. Does he own it, and would he buy it here? What does he think? Thanks.
Okay, so we don't currently own Shawcor. I see no reason why it wouldn't do well. We're going to see a lot of pipelines get built. We're going to see a lot more infrastructure built. This is a name certainly you could own. They're getting a good return on equity. Stock's been performing well recently, but we don't own it currently.
Okay, next up is Will, who's in Vancouver. Go ahead, Will. Okay, Will's not there. We'll take a short break here. We'll come back with David Burrows. More questions right after this.